This computer. All right, we are recording. So welcome everyone, and thank you Markia and Alex for being here to talk about what's the big deal, kind of thoughts on Black in Genetics Week, and thanks as always Erin for being here for translating and stuff for us. Appreciate it. And I'll introduce myself to everyone too. So I'm Maddie, I'm the Skype Scientist intern. And today we're just going to go through Markia and Alex are going to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about kind of like maybe like give us a little backstory on like how you got into genetics and how kind of big week came to fruition. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, so that's a funny story about how big week happened. Basically, I was posting on Twitter in the first thread I had seen with a bunch of people who had been starting, like, so I've been watching, I basically live on Twitter. That's something to just know about me. And I have so many different Twitter accounts that I will make and delete so that I can scream into the void and just put that energy somewhere. So basically, I had seen Black in Neuro happening. And I was really, really inspired by everything going on with Black in Neuro. And I saw a thread that involved a lot of the organizers who were in charge of these different weeks. And I was curious to know when Black in Genetics Week was happening, because I was like, there's no way it ain't happening. We here and we're a big deal. Where is it at? And so I posted and I said, hello, is Black in Genetics Week a thing? And then I was quoted, and that quote said, congrats, girl, you the founder. So it all kind of just happened. And as soon as they said, congratulations, you're the founder, I started to make some art and write stuff down.
Yeah, I was gonna say I really like the art. It's been really cool to see. I love how like the little, because I wore like little DNA helix earrings today. So I love like, yeah, I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I have something. So my PI, Dan McKay, is my soundboard sometimes. And honestly, both of them are, but I use them differently. And my other PI is Jill Doan at UNC. And Dan, one time I said to him that I had been wearing these hoop earrings a lot. And he was like, why are you wearing your big hoop earrings? He doesn't talk like that, by the way. That's just me. I'm code switching. I cannot help it. It's just how I am. So he said to me, why do you have those hoops on? And I said, well, Dan, because big hoop energy is actually a thing. And sometimes I need to remind myself by like these little dangly things hanging off my, like, the side of my head, that I'm a big deal. And I can do these things. Science is really, really, really hard. And so sometimes I just like, need to boost myself on the back or need a little reminder tap saying, you got this, girl. And so I wear big earrings sometimes on the days that I just need that big energy. So anyway, thank you. Also, someone pointed out to me in one of my labs, probably Jill Doan, who just points things out to me all the time, that when she looked at the graphic, she actually thought that the hoop earring was a cohesin ring. And she was like, are you calling out our lab? Because our lab is very, very intimately interested in the biology of cohesin molecules.
That's awesome. Markia, do you want to give us a little background about yourself?
Oh yeah, and so basically me and Alex have been friends. So from there, I was like waiting for someone to start it because I didn't want to be the one who had to start it. I have too much work to do, and I felt like, oh, that was going to require a lot of work. So I was hoping to have someone to do it with, and I got lucky that me and Alex are already friends. And so I just texted her and was like, let's get this popping. And we just went from there. And you don't know how long it took us to get her curls right and her baby hairs.
Listen, that took hours to make. I was sitting and I literally was sitting with my right hand in front of my screen, making sure that all of the curls were turning in the right direction. And some of them may not be, right-handed helices, because I would also like to remind the community that Z-form DNA is a thing, but
Yes.
Z-form DNA is rare. So the majority of them curls, they got the right-handed helix going on. But some of them may be a little left-handed, just to, point that out.
As a left-handed person, I appreciate any left-handed representation. So yeah, that's awesome. I was wondering too, I don't know if everyone's seen your designs, not to like put you on the spot, but do you have anything that you like, if you would be open to sharing your screen? Because I've seen a couple on Twitter, but
Yeah. Hold on.
here, all panelists.
Both has disabled attendee screen share.
I just let you share.
Let me pop open my Illustrator. I've got it right here. So yeah, there's, my first ever, sorry. I was on a different screen and I was concerned that my mute was still on. All right, so my first ever job was working as a receptionist in a hair salon in my tiny little community. And I used to straighten my hair every single day because as we will probably get into, I'm from an Amish community. And I have quite literally spent my entire life black in the ivory. And so when I was in high school, what I thought was beautiful was when my hair was straight. And so I straightened my hair pretty much every day. Like that was my time to just sit, listen to music, and like kind of think and like have quiet time with myself is when I was doing my hair. I've done the chemical relaxers and everything, and I am happy to say all of the hair that was treated with a chemical straightener has now been cut off and we're done. So that's good. But hair is a really, really, really big deal to me. I have been very frustrated by all of the rhetoric that I have seen indicating that, Black hair is somehow not professional or doesn't belong in a professional space. That drives me crazy. Most of the reason that drives me so crazy is because I have spent so much of my life, like hours. It takes at least an hour and a half to straighten my hair because of how much I have. And even if you cut it, it still is going to take that long just because you got to go all the way around the head. Like it takes a very long time. And I've spent a lot of my life sitting and thinking about my hair. And so the fact that there's this idea out there that our hair doesn't belong in professional spaces is very insulting to me. I believe that my hair is a part of me and my hair is a big deal. And I would like people to respect the work that I'm putting into doing my hair. So when I was thinking about what I wanted for the Black in Genetics logo, I was like, okay, how do we get curls? Oh, duh, curls are helices, aren't they? Easy. It was so like, I woke up and that idea was like already there. So this week, the name of the game is inspiration and community. Two big words that I have very much found myself leaning into. So the inspiration part is happening at the level of the graphics. I have been, okay, so here. Now that we are talking about graphics, I can go ahead and share my screen. Sorry, I fumble with Zoom. I know that we've been in this pandemic for a long time. You can ask my PIs. I fumble with Zoom a lot. Okay, so I'm just gonna take y'all through this little thing I have going on that you saw some previews of yesterday. Share screen, Illustrator. Okay, can y'all see my screen? So one thing that I have been working on is this concept of replacing hair with DNA, because once again, our curls are helices. So that just makes sense to me. And our hair is something that needs to be respected. It's part of our heritage. There is something very, we are very intentional with our hair. And so I love to talk about hair. I used to work in a hair salon. I was also in an Amish community, so no one knew how to do my hair. I had to do it myself. And like, I think a lot about hair. So here is the most complete thought, I guess we could say, of the album art that I was trying to get away with. So the way I approached this was first by making sure that I had their faces accurate, and I just traced, that's all, to make sure that the faces are reflective of what I see. So after I have the face down, then I start working on some hair. So you can ask Markia. I really have been thinking a lot about how I wanted to represent these curls. So if we go through here, you can see that their curls appear to be in a very intentionally organized fashion. So I also study genome architecture, three-dimensional genome architecture, and the molecular determinants of that genome architecture. So when I looked at this, I immediately thought, oh, heterochromatin. That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at some heterochromatin. So that's actually where this one came from. These little nucleosomes, they are not hamburgers, people. That is what my boyfriend thinks they are. Nope. These are nucleosomes. And I even got, look at this. Look at this detail. 2 times around. Amazing, amazing. Okay, so we got this hair going on, and I was calling this chromatinized. Chromatin, if I can just pause and get into that word for a moment. The original definition of the word chromatin comes from chrome, color, how things appear. So the first observation, I believe, by a microscopy was looking at DAPI staining, and people observed that there are DAPI dense places in a nucleus. If you like really zoom in, you can see that. So I'm sorry, for people who do not know, DAPI is a dye that is incorporated. So here, let me zoom on Cardi. DAPI is a dye that gets incorporated between the rungs of your DNA ladder. I think, please correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. And DAPI will stain DNA. DAPI doesn't stain RNA, DAPI stains DNA, I hope. Oof. So, okay. The original definition of heterochromatin comes from the fact that if you look at a stain of a nucleus under a microscope, you can see differences in the intensity of DAPI. The reason that there are differences in the intensity of DAPI is that there is an organized way that your whole genome occupies a nucleus in 3-dimensional space. And so if you have a place where you have a big old clump of DNA just sitting and condensing, then you get something that looks like this, where it's a big fat blob. And when you look under a microscope, that big fat blob will have a different intensity of the blue, which most DAPI microscopy is colored blue. If you look at that, you can see differences in the intensity of that blue. So, okay, blue is cool. Blue is, has been described as the most complex color. And interestingly, I was reading this article one time about how languages get to blue. So in the order of naming things, if you look at like the order that colors got their names for different languages, typically blue is one of the last ones that people consider. And so I've just really been captured by the blue nuclei that I'm looking at in a microscope. So then when I was trying to think about how I wanted to approach this album artwork, immediately I thought chromatinized. That is what we are going for. So, all right, so we got chromatinized. Now, what does chromatinized mean? It means different intensities of color. We got different wavelengths going. Physics people, You can explain this on your week. I will not be explaining optics of color right now. So here's another version of that, where if you notice, the stuff that is dense, it does have the blue in it, is going to be darker than the stuff that is more relaxed. So this is something that I think a lot about. The structure of the three-dimensional architecture, right? Like, how is your DNA arranged in three-dimensional space? Something that drives me nuts is that most people think that chromosomes are mitotic chromosomes for their whole life. The vast majority of the time, your chromosomes are not condensed into those chromosomes that you think of. That's not what they look like. They spread out. You have to express certain parts of your genome at a certain time, depending on what cell you are. And so one way that that is accomplished is through doing things like this. You can be compact in some places. Sometimes your cell does this if they want to silence all the stuff they got going on. So maybe you belong to like a skin or an eye. You don't want to use the other cell types' genes, because one of the basic facts is that all cells of a single organism are working from an identical DNA blueprint. And, you know, organisms are really complex. There's a lot of cell types going on. There's a lot of cell subtypes going on. There's time, development. Someone tried to tell me development isn't cool. I will throw some hands at you. Let's go. Like, not a thing that I am willing to entertain. Development is cool. It is literally studying the effect of time on the biology. So one of the things that can happen is your cells can decide to express certain parts of this silenced stuff if they want. And so they have to like physically get to those places. And they do that by making things more open and accessible to all the other proteins that got to get in there. So that's my, thank you, Megan and Cardi, for giving me this opportunity to explain my science in a hip hop relevant way. So those are just kind of my thoughts on artwork. I have a habit of starting on thoughts and rambling. I realize we only have a set amount of time for this Q&A session, so I'm happy to stop here.
You know, thank you for sharing. I like really appreciate the amount of thought that has gone into, like, yeah, the fact that heterochromatin, and like, it's amazing. Yeah, really cool. And we do have a question actually already for y'all, kind of about, they're asking kind of how do you intend to take this energy that Black in Genetics Week has kind of built up over the past 7 days and kind of keep that momentum moving forward outside of like a fixed week structure?
Yes, there are a lot of ways that we are working in the background to think about this already. One of those ways is to continue this conversation. So I'm all about conversations, not about presentations. I think presentations are great and they have their place. They inform people. But at the same time, we are scientists and we are all literate. So that means y'all can read. So read those definitions that somebody has really spent a lot of time thinking about. Words matter. And just take those definitions and assimilate them into the way you speak. We do this all the time. It shouldn't be so hard. So, like, that's kind of my idea going on. I would like to just keep the people talking as much as possible. One of my observations that I have made just generally in my life through being Black and Ivory is that the vast majority of people I've interacted with are so well-intended and their hearts are definitely in the right place, but sometimes they don't say the right thing. And I am a person who is like, that is totally cool with me. This is a conversation, right? Like, you're not going to be able to learn if you're so scared to say what is going on the inside of your head voice. You got to use the outside of your head voice in order for other people to give you feedback on that. And so it's really important to me that everybody is conversing, and regardless of your identity, you must be talking. This is systemic. It is not individual. And so that requires what today is all about, intersectionality and inclusion. I want white cis men saying these words and feeling empowered to use them the right way, because they're the ones who are already in these positions of power that can really, really, really help us. And so it's really important to me that the entire scientific community is well read on this work, this literature, this history, and what we got going on, because that's the data they need to brainstorm ways of moving forward. Now, we're at this action part, right? We got to move forward. We got to put our feet in a direction and take some steps. That's why I'm all about the shoes, all about them shoes. Make sure your laces are tied, because this stuff is hard. It is very, very hard. And we are going to walk into territory that is difficult. You cannot get answers to your question. You cannot answer, this difficult topic, and you cannot discuss this difficult topic unless you have so many different perspectives on it. One of my other points about today is that Blackness is so diverse, so diverse. In the United States, we define Blackness as having non-white skin, usually, oftentimes. And, that is really powerful, right? Because that means that all of these people who cannot belong to the white-skinned community are immediately labeled. And literally our presence in spaces is political because of the way that the United States talks about race. And so what I am all about is empowering the people who literally study the biology of race to help us discuss race in the future. We need to put our feet in the right direction. And if we're walking, we can all walk together. That's cool. We just gotta go and continue that conversation. So now back to what I have learned, right? Most people, super well-intended, heart's in the right place. So that means that, sometimes they say things that might not be a complete thought. This is all about a conversation to just keep that mouth running. And most of the time, regardless of, their political identity, their racial identity, their blah, blah, blah identity, regardless of their identity, they oftentimes end up in the same place as me. And if we can encourage and empower people to keep that conversation moving, I think that might be a way to get some actual changes and actual action happening.
I was just going to add, we also are working on some more actionable plans in terms of working with other Black and X groups and coming up with some documents regarding how we can move our weeks forward and make this more than just like a week and make it into a movement by having actionable plans, whether that be for like our institutions or just science in general. But we're also working with like different editors like Nature Genetics and trying to publish something so that way there's a living document for people to refer to, and it's kind of us addressing the social issues that are going on within genetics and how we can improve the lack of diversity.
All right, I got a spitball off something Markia just said. It was great. Living document. Part of this stuff that is so hard is the fact that scientists are used to saying things that get set in stone. And we need to give ourselves the flexibility to have the conversation to keep moving things forward. We need to pull out all of these ideas, see what works, see what doesn't work, figure out the aspects that we like, run it by everybody in our community, right? Like, I think something I am also frustrated by is this like absolutism, like existing on the polar side of the spectrum, and then those people being the ones that are talking. Like, I really struggle with that on the internet, and I feel like, you know, if you let the conversation be unsupervised, you can get into that absolutist territory, and that's not where we need to be. Like, we need to be collaborative, and we need to like really put our heads together. We got really smart noggins. Like, we are literal PhDs. We have literally proven that we have the ability to brainstorm and the ability to like make knowledge. So I think we can do this. I think we can do this. That's all I gotta say. My shoe calling. Markia's hollering. I'm so glad you're muted. My shoe is calling people. Get behind, get in front. I do not care where you are. Just be walking, please.
What did the slipper have to do with it?
The slipper was the closest thing to a shoe that I had. We don't got black and physio here, but I hope they understood I was talking to them.
Yeah, I do love on y'all's website you have like I don't know if this has been preset or something, but it looks like almost since the Black Birders Week we've kind of like moved forward and almost highlighting different groups of scientists. It looks like through right now, at least through November, which is awesome. And I feel like I'm like medium active on the Twitter community, but I've seen so much going on Twitter, and it's been awesome.
Yeah.
I do see MC Hammer. I think MC Hammer has been retweeting a lot of really cool genetics papers or something like that, which has been random, but I love it.
All right, I recommend just taking a day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Take a whole weekend. Block it out. And just sit on that man's Twitter. You will not be sad. You will not.
I followed him. I was
not be sad.
Yeah.
He is smart. He is real smart.
Yeah. No, to everyone on here, I recommend also, if you're on Twitter, follow MC Hammer. He seems highly motivated in science and like has been basically chatting with scientists about their research on Twitter, which is like crazy. Yeah, Twitter's awesome.
Well, I'm not gonna say that.
Yeah, true. Okay.
Twitter can be awesome.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's cool we got to hear a little bit about your research, Alex. I'm also interested in, I know on like the Skype Scientist page, we have a little info on what you do, Markia, but I'd be interested as well as I think the attendees would too. Kind of like,
oh yeah. So I am a third year like Alex, and I'm in the Pathobiology and Translational Sciences program actually. So I'm not in the genetics program like Alex. And Alex is a bit more basic science than I am. I'm heavily on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I am a basic scientist. That is who I am. And I'm part of the genetics and molecular bio curriculum. I'm very sorry I didn't mention that at the start.
Oh, you're fine. And basic, just so everyone knows, like basic science is more about like exploring novel questions, while Markia, like what would you describe? Yeah, what you.
So mine's is more translational in the respect that I work on a lot more clinical data and a lot more like epidemiology, which is basically like the study of people and populations and how that causes them to get cancer, for example, because I study cancer. And so I study different types of cancers, and I use computational genomics to look at how like environmental factors, reproductive factors, and all these different factors that are related in your environment cause you to have racial disparities. And so I look at breast cancer, and I look at how African-American women are like 3 times more likely to get more aggressive breast cancers and die than white women are. And then in liver cancer, I look at Asians and African-Americans and the disparities there.
Interesting. Yeah, what we talked about a little yesterday is how broad you can, like genetics, and then there's so many things you can do with genetics, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's why I loved the talks yesterday, because I got to talk or hear more. I didn't get to talk with them, but hear more from the GCs and That's just really important work, I feel like.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's kind of SciComm in a way. Like she's bringing, and other genetic counselors are bringing genetics to a more applied, accessible point, I feel like.
yeah, so I actually have a comment.
Yeah.
I am, as you all know, I am very bothered that these people are not called doctors. Academia, I am personally coming for you on behalf of the genetic counselors because they need to be doctors. Oh my goodness gracious. Like, they are at the intersection of mental health, they're at the intersection of family and community, and then genetics. Like, they are geneticists. They had to, master being a geneticist before they could talk about genetics, right? And so when I was in high school, I actually was very, very close with my high school biology teacher, and I still am. And she invited a genetic counselor to come and speak to us because we were studying like a bunch of stuff going on inside a nucleus, as you do as a high school biology student. This was advanced biology too. Or actually, no, this is when I was a freshman. So she had this genetic counselor come and talk to all of us about literally just what she does. Like, I think this genetic counselor may have been reaching out to some people to kind of spread information about who she was and what she was doing. But she said that, and something that like really stuck with me, was that her background was in psychology. And then she got to thinking about how she wanted to use that psychology, because she had always been very, very good at biology. But when she was in college, she was just more interested in the psychology side of things. And so when she was looking for what she wanted to do with her life, she found passion in genetic counseling. And I'm very sensitive to the energies going around. I'm a Pisces moon. And so I picked that up right away. And I became an immediate fan, like truly and honestly, like a fangirl of all of these genetic counselors. And so then this week, something that I absolutely was not expecting was the fact that so many PhDs were not familiar with the world of genetic counseling. Like, that is a bridge that we probably should have, just to remind the scientists that what they're doing impacts real people, and what they're doing is so, so important.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it does seem to be less well known. I remember learning about it in high school also, because I did a genetics minor, but I'm more of an evolutionary biologist. But yeah, like it's a really cool way to bring in genetics and psychology and helping other people. Without, I'm personally scared of needles, so I was not interested in being like a that kind of doctor. But yeah, it's not well known, and it's a really cool career path. So I think it's been really awesome that to bring in broad perspectives of a lot of different people in genetics, so that you can see really what you can do with science, like at a young age, and now like anyone that's accessing these Zoom chats.
Yeah, and I just got to put it out there. The only reason I did not become a genetic counselor is because I am a kind of person who would much rather talk to mice than people. That's really what it boils down to.
You work with mice?
That's a really good question. Actually, I've worked with almost every major model organism. I was in a mouse genetics lab as an undergrad, and I was studying laminopathies, so they're diseases of the nuclear envelope caused by point mutations to this gene called lamin A. So Progeria, which is I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, so I very much apologize to my Progeria family. But HGPS, Hutchinson's-Gilford progeria syndrome, is a disease, a rare, very, very, very rare genetic disease that causes its patients to age very rapidly. So at the time that I started studying it, I was, for some reason, that the number 17 is in my head. I think that at the time I started studying it, the oldest Progeria patient alive was 17 years old. It kills its patients very quickly. The mutation is really complicated because that gene is very complicated. But it turns out that there are a lot of diverse communities that have progeria. So not necessarily the Black community, but like I think there are a lot of progeria patients in India. There's a HBO documentary called Life According to Sam. And Sam was a progeria patient, and both of his parents were PhDs, actually, or have PhDs. One of them may also have an MD or both. I don't know. But it was a really, really powerful documentary that I watched that just made me think about what I was doing in the lab a lot differently. And so, right, so that was my mouse project. And what was really fun was seeing the crazy structures, like under a microscope, that a nucleus can have when you mutate one of its nuclear envelope proteins. So lamins give the nuclear envelope like structural support. They arrange in a meshwork. And so if you get rid of that structural support in, say, a cardiomyocyte that is beating and moving around a lot and contracting, you can get wiggly, crinkly fry looking little nuclei that go in the same little crinkly fry fashion as their cell. It's really, really, really cool. And like, yeah, a lot happens when you mutate that gene. Understandably, because it kills its patients very, very quickly.
Yeah. You know, it is always crazy to me. Yeah, one little one mutation and all of these downstream effects. That's like the cool thing about genetics. That's also like sometimes sad with how many random things that can happen. But yeah, it's really interesting thinking about that.
Yeah. So here's one of those reasons I need to be a basic biologist. I'm very aware that progeria and laminopathies are diseases that impact people, and there's a very strong social component to that. At the same time, though, if you mutate that protein in a mouse or in a cell culture, it is so cool what happens. Like, there is something really, really fascinating about the biology going on of lamins. And like the whole lamin field has been aware of this disease for a long time. Long time. What does that mean in science? I don't really know. But, you know, we're not ignorant to that fact. Like, it's been around. We're trying to figure out what is going on because it's a lot. And there's an order of operations that is really, really crucial and important if you want to understand how to treat these patients. So here's something that I think is really important and I would like to talk about. It's related to the conversation that was happening last night with not Dr. Aaron and Dr. Lloydie. So they were talking about, and I think they kind of have different frameworks of approaching this question. Do we use CRISPR to treat genetic diseases? One thing that I learned was when you mutate this particular protein, a lot of things happen afterwards. One of the unexpected things that came from that for me was seeing a phenotype in mitochondria. Our mitochondria were going bananas in these cells. And so immediately we were like, whoa, what on earth, what could that lead to? Well, the mitochondria is in charge of, you know, it's not just the powerhouse of the cell, people. It can also be the killer of the cell. The mitochondria, they know how autophagy works for sure. So and they know how mitophagy works. They even have like their own way of getting rid of themselves. It is awesome. So I got really pulled into mitochondrial biology. And then I started to think about, oh, wait a minute. So now we have a heart that has been poisoned by progerin, so that's the flavor of the protein product that is made by the Progeria harboring mutant. I don't know how to describe that in a more better way. Hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say if you're familiar with the central dogma. So, right. So it's not just about the mutation and the stuff going on inside the nucleus. It's also about what happens after that, right? So if we think about progeria, that mutation has been sitting there and something crazy goes on when that person is born. Okay, so you have a progeria patient who doesn't get diagnosed until they're a toddler, and you notice that they're not growing the way that they're supposed to be growing. And, you know, they have these different phenotypes, and you notice your child starts to have all these weird problems with like their heart. Oh no, that's not good. Side note, most progeria and so laminopathies is a class of genetic disorders that are related to this gene I'm talking about, progeria. Lamin A, excuse me, lamin AC, if we're talking about the protein, I guess. So, okay, so we have the DNA, and that DNA has that mutation. You can get rid of that mutation if you want. You can CRISPR that out. Now, what are you going to do with your patient who has had this poisonous flavor of that protein in its cell already? Their hearts no longer look like a healthy heart. Mm-hmm. They start to have a bunch of fibrosis build, and it makes it very difficult for them to contract and relax. So how now do you deal with that problem? Because it's one thing to clear the DNA. So the current approach to treating progeria is farnesylation. Farnesylation is a biochemical reaction that is happening on the mutant protein product of the progeria gene, or lamin A gene, and basically the farnesylated tag doesn't come off appropriately in a progeria patient. And so that is what we refer to as progerin. It's this flavor of the protein product that cannot have the farnesylated tag removed. So there is currently a successful drug that is being tested with progeria patients that just cleaves that farnesylated tag, so that, you know, even if your lamin isn't, sorry, Markia, she's yawning. I'm so sorry. So anyway, even if your gene is fine, even if your gene is fine, that progerin has spent 3 years wreaking havoc on this patient. Mm-hmm. And so what do you do with all of the effects that have come downstream of that original mutation? Like, CRISPR is not the end of the answer. We need to continue walking in that direction, right? And having that conversation so that we can all brainstorm different ways of dealing with really complicated, hard problems just like this. And so, like, that is just a very interesting kind of aspect that I wanted to add to the conversation that Dr. Lloydie and Dr. Aaron were having last night.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say, I did not yawn because of you.
That's true. I guess I'm in California, so it's like, it's not early, it's almost 11, but it's early-ish, so I would understand. Oh, we just got a question. Do y'all have hopes/plans to have some Black and genetics outreach opportunities? Double question marks. So they're very excited.
This seems like a good idea to talk, or a good time to bring attention to my shirt that says "There's no place like hope." This shirt was purchased and all of the proceeds went to research for Huntington's disease, one of the most hopeless kind of genetic diseases that we have. You don't know you have it until you're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, depending on where in the genetic anticipation generation you're hanging out at. And so, like, yes, we have hopes. Yes, we have plans. Markia, would you like to speak on some of these hopes and plans?
Yes. So we're hoping.
I like the lead-in. That was good.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, we're hoping to. We've partnered with some organizations, and we want to reach back to the community, and especially the lay community, because we feel like it's important for us to increase awareness of different diseases that are affecting the Black population. And a lot of the times there's this medical distrust within the Black population, and scientific distrust. Doesn't help the president we have now, but that's a different story. So we're hoping that by us starting this big platform, we can try to eventually do more outreach opportunities and reach back to the community, have different like webinars or features where we can talk in non-scientific ways and communicate efficiently, kind of like Dr. Janina does. Like, her podcasts are so great, and the fact that she can base her science through hip hop is something. Obviously, we're not that hip hop savvy, but
Excuse me?
I'm saying, like, I'm not really good at being like creative in terms of like titles, and I usually leave that to Alex. But
Yes, girl, don't say we. I'm working. Respect my art.
But yeah, so that's the hopes and plan. And by creating this platform, we hope that we can create a community and we can all work together to foster in more people in genetics and increase the numbers, especially for people who are disabled, which we wanted to say that we apologize and we are working very feverishly to make sure all of our tweets are accessible to the community, and we're working with our partners to make sure it's accessible to the community. But we appreciate anyone who acknowledges that we made a mistake or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. We are more than, once again, this is a two-way conversation. That's part of what is so important right now. Like, it's okay if you have issues in your past. The problem, the stuff that's not okay, is ignoring them and not talking about them. Because how are you ever going to be at peace with that and figure out how to move forward if you're not owning it, right? Like, we need to acknowledge and not be afraid to acknowledge like the history that is behind all of this stuff. And, you know, I think that's something that I've been trying really hard to kind of pull out of the woodwork a little bit. Like, how do we reconcile with eugenics? How do we do that? That's a big question. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm saying, but I'm gonna say something for sure, because if I say something, someone will reply. And when that person replies, then I can say something else. I'm the type of person who learns best through conversations. Now, this is not conversations necessarily with the entire world at once. So Twitter, even if you're trying to teach me, you're not always teaching me. Just gonna say that. Sometimes I see things and I'm very frustrated by them. And so part of what I am, you know, really passionate about is inspiring people to just say words, because words have power, and the ability to converse on really hard stuff is a tool that we must have if we actually want to have a change that, you know, doesn't just happen with some people of our community. We really truly and honestly need to be operating at an extraordinarily inclusive wavelength.
Yeah, then jumping off of that, someone just asked a question about what kind of resources would y'all recommend for people trying to learn more about the history of racism in genetics? I know they have the I don't remember what the book title is called, but the book about Henrietta Lacks and kind of the history of that.
Yeah, I haven't read that book. It's on my list. I don't have time. Let me just say, I am tired, y'all. Nene Leaks, thank you for your meme, girl. I'm so tired. Like, please, there are books. There are people who are literal experts in in answering this question, and I am more than happy to point you into their directions. So that's actually something that is best answered, I think, not in this call, but rather by looking to our website. So we've been very, very intentional. This is something that has been going on in the background. As soon as Big Week happened, there were a couple of people who reached out to me. Markia was the first one. And then the people who I encountered right after that were the women who run BIPOC, Black and Indigenous People of Color, in computational biology. It's a Twitter account. And the people there said, you know, hey, Alex, like, I see what you're doing. There's actually one of them, Adelaide Tovar, she goes to UNC with us. And she's in the Initiative for Maximizing Student Diversity, IMSD is what it's called, which is a NIH-funded office on our campus. She's in IMSD with me, and she actually was my tutor for one of my grad school classes. And so it was just me, her, and two other girls. Every week we would sit and talk about like whatever was going on. So that definitely means the class. But that also means, like, you know, our presence in this space is political. And there is something, I'm trying not to cry. That's why I gotta pause. I'm sorry. There's something very, very important about having a community. Because if you don't have people to talk to, it's really hard. And that community can look very different. Remember, I told y'all, Blackness is diverse, right? Like, so immediately Adelaide Tovar reached out, and the girls who run this Twitter page, and they said, what can we do? And I was like, there's a lot you can do. And my gosh, they have done so much more than I even thought that they were going to do. I was like, oh yeah, they'll retweet us, great. No. They've been helping us compile resources. They have been our soundboard for all of the things going on. Like, you know, I had this idea, something that bothers me a lot about 2020 is cancel culture. I hate cancel culture. I can't stand cancel culture. It makes me mad. It just makes me mad. It's an absolutism. And absolutes are dangerous. So what do we do about James Watson? He is a man that has gone on record saying, I wrote the double helix so that people who do not understand science, like women and Black people, can understand the science of what I did. Now, can you imagine how I felt as a first-year biology student at the University of Chicago who came from a teeny tiny little Amish community, and for my whole life I heard, oh my word, James Watson, wow, he's so cool. Like, okay, no, guess he's not that cool. Rosalind Franklin, she the cool girl. Okay, whoa, like, what's going on here? Like, I have a lot of feelings about all of that, a lot. So then I get to U Chicago, and true, like literally during my first quarter there, James Watson was on our campus. And I was like, okay, well, I hate him, but I do have a copy of the double helix. Sorry, let me rewind. I don't hate. Hate requires far too much energy, and I do not have the time. I'm tired. I'm so very tired, people. I would like to divert my energy into positivity. So I do not hate, but I strongly dislike, to the point that I actually did not go to his seminar. Instead, someone from across the hall, he's a Taiwanese person, was really excited. He was like, hey, Alex, James Watson is going to be here. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to that. Like, I got a class, and I will not be skipping my class to go and see James Watson. However, he's still James Watson. I want his signature on my book because he's still James Watson. So I asked him to take my book. He took my book, and he got it signed. Now, do you think I could have gotten that book signed as easily if I had shown up to that seminar? No. I can tell you why. I am far too loud to keep my mouth shut. That is why. And so having the community that is diverse gave me the power to own a copy of the double helix that has been signed by James Watson as a woman of color who is studying genetics. I just want that to sink in for a minute. Like, I have that book on my shelf. I can go and get it for you right now. And that's on my shelf. So that is meaningful to me. Now, have I read that book? No. But I have that book. And I have that autograph because there is power in his science. There is power in Rosalind's science. Like, you know, the literal chemical structure of DNA. They found that, well, I mean, that's complicated, right? Like, science is a conversation. There are a lot of people who do science. I've heard from several people now that we probably would have gotten that structure without James Watson. Crick, he's a smart man. He was studying proteins at the time, I think, because that would make sense. Why wouldn't proteins be the thing that, you know, holds the capacity for inheritance? Because that's what gets passed along. This DNA stuff, like all that, that's the same in every cell. Why would that be the thing that is changing the way these cells behave? So, you know, I think there is something else that needs to be the answer. I don't think we can fully cancel because, once again, absolutes are really dangerous. Like, good people do bad things, bad people do good things. Like, I'm not going to sit here and debate on morals of good and bad and, like, what does that mean anyway? It's so complicated. Like, these are really difficult topics. So I'm trying to remind scientists of the power that they have, right? You have the power. You are studying the stuff that makes us us, right? Like the literal biology that makes us tick. Y'all got the blueprint on that, the literal genetic blueprints, and you're trying to interpret it. Please, please, for the love of all that is good and sacred in this world, recognize the power that you have when you're designing your studies. Are you going to make people fill in a bubble? What bubble would I fill in? Because a lot of these words that we use, we might not recognize it because, you know, scientists are people. They don't want to, a lot of scientists I've met don't really want to get into politics. Like, they're here for facts, right? Like, politics is social. But the thing is, your data is political. It doesn't matter. Your science is already political because of the way that society looks at what you are studying and the data that you are making. So please, for the love, just think about the way that you study your science. And then also, I want you to think about the way that you talk about your science. I don't want to see absolutes anymore. I'm really tired of it. Like, what do you do with me? Let's remind ourselves, scientists are people, right? I got this book. Elementary Forms of Religious Life by Emil Durkheim. Emil Durkheim tells us, within man exist two beings, one that is individual and one that is social. So the man that is, individual, right? We all are very familiar with what that looks like. The man that is social, though, that one is a lot harder and it's a lot bigger than just one person, right? So we need to be very intentional about the way that we talk about things, because if we're not, society is just going to take what we say and do what they want with it. So how about you remember, you're the one writing this paper. You're the one choosing the words. Words mean things. Words are powerful. Those are all my words. Oh my goodness, yet again, we're happy that Markia is on mute, or else we would all, our eardrums would be busted. That is for sure.
Yeah, no, thank you for talking about that. I think that's really important to think about. And we're coming to kind of the end of our time, unfortunately. And so normally we do like a couple little questions at the end, but I think I kind of just want to end with maybe just one. So usually we ask, like, is there something that you wish that you could kind of tell, like if there was a way to like transmit a statement or a thought into like every person's head about anything, is there like something that you'd really want to share with the world about Black and genetics, about any topic that you think is like a good way to kind of end our live stream chat today?
All right, fine. Okay, yeah, sure. I got something to say. We know that. Okay. So I have a very complicated relationship with my identity. I am half white and half Afro-Latina. I have never met my biological father that I know of. My mom raised me in that Amish community I mentioned earlier. And so my feelings on race are complicated, right? My feelings on ancestry are complicated, because if we look at my ancestry alone, like, I am a juxtaposition of many worlds. I have white supremacy in my family history. I have, Blackness in my family history, but then I also have Latina and Latinxness in my family history. Like, all of these things are in my DNA, right? And so first, I would like to say Afro-Latina is a big community. Like, there are a lot of Afro-Latinas in this world. Cardi B, woo, girl. I actually saved a couple of her songs that are largely in Spanish because I identified with that a little bit better than the English version, because she's recognizing her Afro-Latina stuff. Like, there's this cool balance and like synergy going on. That's the space that I occupy, right? Synergy. That's why diversity is so important. We need to have all of these different perspectives to make it easier to walk around the entire logical circle. So when we're having these conversations, we can take advantage of our community if that community is diverse. Now, I've already told you, I believe Blackness is a very diverse community, or has a very diverse community. And so Afro-Latina or Afro-Latinxness is one of those really cool communities, right? Like, we can lean into that. We can really look at what is going on with all of these mixed people and see how mixed people walk through this world and have to come to terms with the fact that they are a mix of a lot of different cultures. So once again, the way that society talks about race is not exactly biological. The way that society talks about race is going to be social, because society makes the social stuff, right? So if we think about that for just a second, we can learn a lot. How can a mixed person come to terms with their identity while not having imposter syndrome about it? That is something that is a big question I have personally been working through with my therapist, because I identify with whiteness in a cultural way. I identify with Latinxness in a cultural way, and I identify with Blackness in a cultural way that is very real. So how is it that I can exist and I can look at all of my identities and wear all of those hats at the same time? Well, I'm just gonna make a new hat. How about that? Like, we mixed hat. Now, I am not an absolutist. Once again, this is not to say that everything must be diverse. This is not to say that, everything must have, people from every single community on their board. That's tokenism. And that's racism, right? Like, that is still operating in this racist framework. If you want some text on that, I highly recommend Frantz Fanon. He's a really, really great social thinker. My personal favorite book is called Black Skin, White Mask. And then he also has another book, Wretched of the Earth. These books have been extraordinarily helpful in helping me understand what exactly is going on with the Blackness and the whiteness that I must occupy, because I am mixed. There's also this thing called representation. Zendaya is my freaking hero. I love Zendaya. I follow her, I retweet her, I do all that nonsense as much as I possibly can on my Twitter that y'all don't see, because I love her. She understands that she is white, and she understands that she is Black, and she is really, really keen on reminding you that she is white and she is Black, and I think that's cool. So, what do I want everybody to know? Mixed people exist. Mixed people can be helpful, because we have already had to occupy this really weird space, right? Like, our existence is political. Our existence in science is political. We have to come to terms with our identity and embrace aspects of our identity in order to understand ourselves. And so mixed people are already sitting at the crux of all this stuff going on, because we've had to think about that. It's literally in our DNA. We did not ask to be like this. We were literally born this way. And so, ask a mixed person what they think, because they probably have something to say that they're not really comfortable saying out loud. Like, when I was growing up, I was in this Amish community. So in high school, everybody looked to me to interpret rap music for them. Like, it was a thing. And once again, like, I didn't mind that. I've been Black in the Ivory my whole life. I was like, yeah, I love hip hop. Sure, that's great. Like, I leaned into it. I thought that was cool. Then I left my little Amish community. I moved to Chicago. I went to Chicago as an undergrad. And when I was there, Chicago is so diverse. Nobody is special. Like, everybody has their own story, their own identity, their own trauma, like their own thoughts. And saying them out loud is really uncomfortable sometimes, because our thoughts are so precious to us and our intellectual space is so precious. So we need to be able to allow those people to say what they think, because they sit at the interface of these communities that we're trying to bring together. And so that's a resource, I think, that we can take advantage of and just say, okay, mixed people, hey, what's going on? We know you're in the United States, so you probably identify with the color of your skin, but can I just remind you that if we were in Brazil, you would have to be full black in order to be considered black. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's my interpretation of how Brazilian stuff works. I ain't wrong?
Yeah, they consider anybody who's black, they do it the same way we do it. If they're black, they're black.
All right, well, I need to write a letter to this article that I read and let them know that they are very, very incorrect, because they talk about blackness in Brazil as being the flip-flop of the way that it works in the United States, where you have to be like real black in order to be considered black. Whereas here, we have a thing called light-skinned people.
Oh, you're referring to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you light-skinned in Brazil, you're probably not black.
But if you have black
light-skinned
features, they still treat you the same way.
I see. Look, there's communication going on. We're learning, right? Like this is what I'm about. We can have these conversations and it's okay. Like, I'm cool to be wrong. I'm so cool to be wrong.
Yeah. Piggybacking off of that, essentially, what I want people to know is that BIG is an organization where we're emphasizing the excellence of Blackness, and it's not just about fighting racism, it's about us finding our community and us forging a community with each other and being there to support each other, but also reaching out to non-scientific audiences and fostering a generation that's interested in genetics. That's a good summary. That's what I want everyone to know.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Markia, you should totally be a basic scientist. You're very concise. I don't know how I'm the one that's a basic scientist. That don't make no sense.
I don't like basic science.
Oh, you're doing a much better job at communicating than me right now in a concise way, and I feel like that's a very basic scientist type of vibe.
So perfect.
Thanks.
Well, we'll inspire. Hopefully, so this will go up on our. I guess I'm speaking to the YouTube right now. This is going to go on the Skype a Scientist YouTube channel, so hopefully more people can access this and be inspired. Today's chat, I think it went really well. Thank you both for coming on and talking about Black and genetics. I hope it sounds like the week went amazing, and we still can keep walking forward and making strides on, just like reaching out to more people, connecting and making a community, which is awesome.
Yes, and thank you, Skype a Scientist, for having your shoes on. Y'all were ready. This whole thing happened so fast and blew up, and that's why I say keep your shoes on, people.
Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you, Erin, for being on with us too. I hope everyone had a good time, all the attendees, and keep an eye out for the future hashtags that are on the Black and Genetics webpage. And stay connected, and hopefully I'll see y'all on Twitter.
Bye.
Yeah.